Welcome to my Hunter example run and strategy guide. If you don't know what an example run is, I talk about it in part 1 of this series. Perhaps you just found this part on its own and started watching in the middle, which is fine. I did sort of intend this to be like if you have trouble in a certain area, you can just look up a certain part of it. This is the part with Shoreline and Shaded Citadel, and it's going to include Shoreline sub-area looks to the moon, because we have a delivery to make, which is pretty much the entire point of Hunter's story, arguably. So these two areas really aren't all that different in Hunter, to the point where I actually brought up some wiki pages on my phone, just so I would have more to talk about, which I know is kind of like, oh great, this guy is just reading off the wiki while doing his guide, but I'll try and add some, subjective things into it. So these blue eels, I don't believe they spawn as frequently or maybe at all. I can't really remember seeing too many of them as Survivor, but just watch out for them. They are nasty. I know they do appear in an area like 5 screens later, a lot, just as Survivor, and maybe even as Monk. Can't really remember, I haven't played Monk in a while. This is just a regular vulture here, obviously, as you can see. It must have a higher spawn rate as Hunter, because I typically never see them here when I'm Survivor. It's always pretty peaceful. Here's the one thing that kind of sucks about Hunter in Shoreline, is that if you're carrying the green neuron still, then you pretty much can't use the jetfish. That's not really that big of a deal. They're not like mandatory if you're going along the center of Shoreline, which is to say that you're just going straight to looks to the moon and back, which is what we're going to do more or less. I might jump around a little bit. Let me talk about the different routes in Shoreline, just for your edification. So if you come from garbage wastes, or really if you come from anywhere, it's just in the opposite direction. If you try and go to the upper layer, which we haven't really had the opportunity to go to yet, then you can, that's where like most of the salamanders are, and probably most of the vulture activity on the whole. You may have gone up there. You can take the shortest route to Shaded Citadel there, I think. I barely go there. I don't recommend it, honestly, because you'll see the most lizards there. The middle route will take you just through most of the, not like swimming deep down sections, but just like swimming along the surface sections. And that's where most of the leviathans, if not all of them, spawn, which is like kind of the canon route, I think, for going through Shoreline. And then there's the lower parts, which are kind of labyrinthine and confusing, which I don't go very often at all. I think I've been through there maybe like once or twice, once on each mode, I would say, Survivor and Hunter once. I don't recommend it on Hunter. So that's the way you get down to Subterranean and also Drainage System. And we are going to be going to Drainage System after we're done here. But we're going to be taking a different route. And you might be wondering why, because that does seem inefficient, and it is. But number one, going down into the lower layers of Shoreline is both confusing and dangerous. I would say that's the one part that kind of is notably different. I'm pretty sure that is where the brother longlegs spawn. I've actually never seen them in person, wherever the heck they are. They might even be in the top layer, honestly, because I've never tried going there as Hunter, and I really don't want to, because it's just a needless headache. But you can go to end the game there, or you can go to Drainage System and kind of take a more roundabout way. Those are both fine, but since this is a beginner-friendly route, what we're going to do is we're just going to go through Shaded Citadel back to Industrial Complex, and then go to Outskirts, and then down to Drainage System that way. And it does seem like a lot of extra steps, but it's really not. You can get through it pretty quickly. It's like the trip back through Industrial Complex is very short. Shaded Citadel is pretty peaceful, as we're going to see. let's see where I'm going here. Yes, so, you know, typical hunter junk. We've got king vultures just going for swims and stuff. They do that from time to time. Something of note is that the king vultures can spear you out of the water, but if you kind of swim down deep and resurface occasionally and just kind of go through it like a, you know, like a steady waveform, sort of just going up and down gently, you can generally confuse it enough that it won't be able to get like a direct hit on you. It won't be able to score a direct hit on you. And don't quote me on that, because they will eventually get you. And there's really not all that much you can do. Even if you're good at combat, it's kind of fighting them from the water. It's dicey. They will have the advantage on you. It's better just to dive and alternate between that. And they won't lose interest, but generally you can get to where you're going and just shake them. And it's not that big of a deal. The Leviathans are not, they don't act any different. They don't seem to appear any more frequently, and they'll probably get distracted with jetfish anyway, so you don't have to worry about that. Other than that, it's just, you know, jellyfish, I guess. Which they can kill you, actually. If you get into a situation where I can't remember if their shocks can actually kill you outright, but they can, if you get hit by them while you're already tired from swimming, they can kill you that way. So it's one of those things, it's like with drop wigs, what I was saying in the last episode, where if you are careless or like asleep at the wheel, then you can get killed by them, but otherwise it's like free food. So here, this is actually where you got to be really careful. You'll have like the most jetfish out of anywhere. And if they knock you, you can actually drop the neuron and anything else you're carrying, which of course is really bad. Normally dropping the neuron or anything isn't that big of a deal. And if you're on like this screen, for example, when it happens, it's like you just swim down to the seabed and you can grab it again. But if you're in some of the open areas, it's going to be either too deep for you to safely retrieve it, or it's just going to be like you can't get it at all because the lower screen doesn't actually lead anywhere. But as long as you keep hopping along the top, like I taught you back in garbage wastes, you should be pretty good. You just kind of have to dodge them every so often. And just remember that, again, not a hunter-specific tip, but the tentacles from the Leviathan can't hurt you or anything. So sometimes, if they're just doing whatever they want off in a corner somewhere, it's fine to just go, because it's not like they're hyper-aware or anything. The wiki says that cyan lizards are actually, like, they're not natively in Shoreline. They're just lineage creatures, like they are anywhere else for hunter, which is odd. But that's good, because like I was saying with the vultures, if a cyan lizard was going at you while you were in the water, that would be really bad. It would be kind of a crapshoot. I think I actually hit that jellyfish in the head with that rock on the ricochet, which it was pretty mean, but I mean, I'm going to eat it and kill it anyway, so it's kind of like, whatever. Although I guess that's the entire argument for like humane slaughter of animals. You know, you don't want to like cause them undue suffering, even if you're going to kill them anyway. But that's depressing. Let's not talk about that. So we are in Looks to the Moon now, which is absolutely 100% no different from any other mode. The only difference is that we're going to be delivering some cargo to Looks to the Moon herself. And since Hunter is a time-focused, time-sensitive mode, I'm not speeding this up because perhaps you can learn something from my slightly faster route than perhaps the one you were taking. And this will give me an opportunity to rehydrate. although we're going to Shaded Citadel, and you can get pearls very easily in the transition from Shoreline to Shaded Citadel. But as I spoke of with garbage wastes, you can kind of never have too many. You can always like barter it with a scavenger, go back, grab some more, and you can farm rep pretty easily that way, given that the farming area isn't too far from like the place where you actually hand them over to the scavengers. Otherwise, it's probably too much of a pain in the ass. But this is definitely a good example of how Hunter isn't really all that hunting focused, if you know where to look. These jellyfish are one of those food sources where it gives a full pip, even though you would think that maybe it would be like with bat flies and blue fruit, where those only give you a quarter. And if I haven't said it already, because there is some blue fruit in Looks to the Moon, if you come across those like piddling food resources that only give a little bit, it still is sometimes worth it to eat them. If the game is giving it to you for free, then you might as well take it, right? Unless you're like really pressed for time and like the fruit is kind of out of the way. Sort of like an industrial complex where they're like hanging up those long tunnels and you have to like either keep wall jumping or like hang onto a pole or something in order to get them. I know those are annoying, but if you are bad at the combat in this, or you just don't want to fight, or whatever, then, if those or the bubble fruit or whatever come across your path, eat them, and that's like maybe 2 or 3 pips, depending on how resourceful and how much effort you put in. So at this point, once you've bartered I guess you're not bartering the green neuron, you're delivering it, then your hands are pretty much free. And it's nice that Hunter can carry a spear on his back, so you can ride a jetfish and still have a spear, technically, which is good. You don't have to worry about dropping anything irreplaceable. So in order to get to Shaded Citadel from here, which typically is like, I don't even know really what the intended way to go is. Like, I don't know if the game intends you to go from Shaded Citadel to Shoreline, or from Shoreline to Shaded Citadel at any one time. I guess it would be, because like, I remember the very first time I ever got through to Shoreline, it was actually from Shaded Citadel and not from garbage wastes. And so that always kind of seemed like the canon route to me. And when you're coming from Shoreline and because the game initially leads you to Looks to the Moon, even though it doesn't do anything. And then it wants you to go to 5 Pebbles via like memory crypts. So I guess going from Shoreline to Shaded Citadel is actually what the game wants you to do. So that's what we're doing here, but then we're not going to go to memory crypts because there's no reason to go back there. And God, the rest of Exterior is just awful. But it's still like a pretty harmless way to go. It's definitely out of the way, but there's not all that much different. Let me pull up the page actually. So yeah, this is the only thing that kind of sucks about like taking the most harmless route, I think, to getting up to this Shaded Citadel transition, is that you have to wall jump up that kind of narrow tunnel. And there's no actual pole up there, so you either have to have a spear, or if you get the jump just right, you don't actually need a spear. You just kind of wiggle around for a while. And then just make sure not to fall into this kelp here, because perhaps you might have some sort of issue discerning where the wreckage you can stand on begins and ends. Sort of like that part at the beginning of the leg. I've never had that happen here, as it's pretty light and not tantalizingly confusing in any way. but maybe that's something you should look out for. So Shaded Citadel is, as Hunter, apparently it has drop wigs, it has spitter spiders, yes, that is true, and it has egg bugs. Yeah, I think I've seen egg bugs there before. So again, let's talk about all the different ways you can go in Shaded Citadel. I think Shaded Citadel is honestly like one of the most linear areas, if not the most linear area, because it only goes Shoreline to Industrial Complex or vice versa, and then if you want, you can go down to Memory Crypts and go to the exterior, which is kind of like a story set piece almost. It's not really like a route that you would go to just to go to it. It's so out of the way. It takes so long. So like even if I wanted to go to, say, like, you know, Chimney Canopy and get up to Sky Islands for whatever reason, like I just wanted to go the top route in the world to get to Subterranean. Even if I wanted to do that, what I would want to do is probably just go to Industrial Complex and go up to Chimney Canopy that way. I think that's like for sure faster by like a couple cycles. But there's still like kind of 3 routes. It's almost like they wanted to connect another area to it, but just didn't. Maybe in Downpour that'll be true. I mean, I'm sure every area will connect to at least like one new area, if not connecting to some old areas in new ways as well. But like there's a top section in Shaded Citadel here, which is kind of like, it's like fairly well lit throughout the whole thing, but the thing is you can't go end to end throughout the whole thing. You kind of got to dive back down to the middle path and then come back up. And there's actually more than one dead end in Shaded Citadel. And one of them is really nasty. It's actually like down further. And I think there might actually be a colored pearl there. And if you get stuck down there without a spear, it can be kind of bad. You got to do a little bit of advanced movement, as far as I can tell. So the lower path is like, you can go down to the water and go through to the leg from there. But also, as the crow flies, I think that it's actually shorter to take the lower route if you're trying to get to Industrial Complex. But it's also more treacherous, and you got to deal with like kelp and stuff. So here, as you'll remember, when I went to 5 Pebbles, I did grab one of his neurons and I ate it, but then I died and I forgot to eat it when I woke up from the shelter, and I left it there. So I don't have a light source, and I just tried to barter a pearl to that scavenger, and he just didn't drop anything, or he like dropped rubble or something and then walked away. And that could actually happen, especially as Hunter, because when you're Hunter or if you just have low rep because, you know, you're a jerk and you kill scavs, you can actually have your bartering costs increased, which sucks. So probably what I should have done is go back and just rest and just grabbed another pearl, in hindsight. But I was just kind of like, screw it, and just kept going because I just wanted to get done with it. And fun fact, not a useful fact, but fun fact, when I first went through Shaded Citadel, my first ever time, I either didn't notice or like didn't understand when the game was trying to tell me to barter for a lantern from the scavs. And so I just went through the entire thing successfully without being able to see anything. And ever since then, I've always been fairly comfortable with Shaded Citadel, just going through the dark, and even some areas later, which we are going to see. It's not very good for the video because you can't really see what's going on. If you ever find yourself in a similar situation, the in-game map is actually pretty useful for that reason, because it allows you, I mean, assuming you've mapped Shaded Citadel before, it allows you to see kind of where the platforms are. I mean, you can't really have it up while you're moving like you're playing Doom or something, but it can help you feel around. And do remember that the lantern mice do count as a food source, as does pretty much anything living in this mode. The slime mold is a bit easier, and it is fairly plentiful, but the lantern mice, which I don't think have any real like bad thing that happens when you kill them, as far as like their reputation goes, like because if I haven't mentioned this before, several creatures in this do have reputation just like scavs do, except it's not like as complex or interesting really. It's just some of them may be more scared of you, or like with Squid Cata, they just like bump you around more. But lantern mice, it's like there's kind of no downside to killing them and eating them, unless you feel bad. Which, if you feel bad about killing anything in this mode, then you might want to adjust your mindset, because there are going to be times when you have to ruthlessly murder in this. But, as always, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Unless you have mastered Hunter and you're going for score, in which case you absolutely should. Unless you don't want to deal with kill squads of scavs. Yeah. Never been there, but I've heard some horror stories. So there is this one area kind of like smack dab in the center, I would say, of Shaded, which like it's a one-way shot as far as I can tell. You can kind of like climb up and back around in like a inverted S shape, but like you eventually get to this drop off where you can't go up, you can only go down. So you just have to kind of dip down and back over. And you eventually get to this spot where, like, if you tunnel all the way down through like a big drop with a pole in the center of each of the shafts, you can get down to the underwater section that way. But you don't have to go all the way down. You can just kind of like go down a little bit and then like go over to the left and then go up. And that takes you to the like beginning area of Shaded, which is where you would be if you were coming from Industrial Complex, which of course is where we're going. Not that you can tell from this video, but I suppose this is good in a sort of educational sense, because it's showing that, something that is really awful, like logistically, can happen to you or happen because of your own negligence, like it does in my case, and you can still persevere. If you want to use a map, I would say go ahead. Some people say that, it's cheating, which, I mean, I guess it sort of is, because the game clearly wants to use its own, like, nebulous map system, which a lot of people hate, and I do get it. I think that once you know the game really well, and you get used to the map, it's actually kind of nice in, like, a weird way. It's hard to explain, you just kind of got to feel it out. But once you get to this area, you're pretty much home free. I managed to kill, like, 3 drop wigs on my way here. And I typically don't find them all that often, even in Hunter. I don't think they appear at all in Survivor in this zone, but they do appear in other places as Survivor. I don't know what that one is doing. It was carrying an explosive spear as part of its bait, which was pretty funny. Once again, I get the craziest, weirdest, dumbest, sometimes drop wigs. And I don't understand. It's almost like my game is personalized. But that pretty much does it for Shaded Citadel. When we come back, we'll be at the final part of this playthrough. We'll be looking at drainage system, outskirts actually, for real this time, and then finally subterranean, or at least part of it, filtration system. Thanks for watching.